Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Manitou Springs City Council for December the 17th, 2024. It's the last meeting of the year. So if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And before I ask the city clerk to call the roll, I will mention that our attorney, Jeff Parker, will be here in a few minutes. He just texted the city administrator saying he's going to be late because of a traffic accident. Who'd imagined that on I-25? Okay, Elena, would you call the roll, please?
City Council members Judith Chandler.
Present.
John Shada.
Here.
Julie Wolf.
Here.
Natalie Johnson.
Here.
Michelle Weatherholt.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune
Present.
and Mayor John Graham.
Present. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is approval of the agenda. Council, you've had a chance to peruse the agenda, so I would look for a motion to accept and approve it.
I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's vote. Okay, we'll vote electronically.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you very much. Next item is public comment on non-agenda items. So this is the portion of the meeting where anyone in the audience can speak to an item that is not on the agenda. So if we had, you have 3 minutes, do we have anyone interested? Elena, have we received any? Okay. Apparently not. Let's move on. I believe we do have at least one party that wants to speak to an agenda item later. So I just want to let you guys know that when that comes up, you'll have a chance. Okay, next item is our consent calendar. We have 3 items tonight. First is presentation of the warrants. The second, approval of the December 3rd, 2024 City Council regular meeting minutes. Approval of the December 10th, 2024 City Council special meeting minutes. If any council would like to take an item off to discuss separately, we can do that. If not, I would look for a motion to approve and accept the consent calendar. So, Julie?
I'd like to take the December 3rd minutes off.
Okay, we'll take the December 3rd minutes off. Do we have a motion then?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar items 1 and 3.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay. Let's go ahead and vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we had taken the December 3rd meeting minutes off as a separate discussion item. Julie, you apparently have some questions or concerns.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, there's a sentence in there on page 14. It says Councilor Wolf suggested removing the fee for permitting sidewalk repair. On page 19, which was page 19 of the memo, as it is not very often that homeowners fix their sidewalks. I believe what it's supposed to say is Councilor Wolf suggested removing the fee for permitting sidewalk repair on page 19, comma, as it should be in the city's best interest or a matter of public policy to encourage homeowners to fix their sidewalks, not to charge them to fix their sidewalks. So that was my point. I just wanted to make that one change because it sounded kind of ridiculous.
Okay, I guess I'm going to ask Councilor Wolf to, if you could articulate the correction that you want so that we actually, I think now that some of us have found the location in the minutes. Everybody who wants to find the minutes, have you found them? If you're in Civic Clerk, yeah, it's page 5 of 8 pages. Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so let's all look at that. And when we've got it then, Julie, if you'll state how you think it should be
Sure.
restated, and then we'll discuss it.
It's a standalone sentence. It's its own paragraph, and it says, Councilor Wolf suggested removing the fee for permitting sidewalk repair on page 19, comma, as it is not very often that homeowners fix their sidewalks. I think that That's not what I said. Certainly not what I meant to say. So I want it to be changed to say Counselor Wolf suggested removing the fee for permitting sidewalk repair as the city should encourage people to fix their sidewalks, not charge them to fix their sidewalks. That was my rationale.
Okay.
May I,
I'll second that.
Well,
may I make a
let's just
recommendation,
skip
having,
here.
having remembered that conversation? Would you be okay with it saying Counselor Wolf suggested removing the fee for permitting sidewalk repair on page 19 to encourage homeowners to fix their sidewalks?
Yeah, that would be fine too. I'm happy with that wording. Same.
Okay.
thing.
How does council feel about that? Any discussion? John, I think, are you still up
I made a motion to
to second?
approve. I don't,
And it's-
which one do you
I'm
want?
happy to second the modified language that Counselor Chandler proposed.
Okay.
Okay.
Or
I'll-
to have that be my motion and you can second.
I'll second that.
Okay, so actually we'll recognize Counselor Chandler as the motion maker and Counselor Shader as the second. Okay. Elena, were you able to copy
I
down
got
the
that,
revisions?
yes.
So you've got that, okay. Is there any further discussion on this? If not, let's go ahead and vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So the December 3rd City Council regular meeting minutes are approved as with that modification. Okay, great. Okay, next item, business items G1, presentation and final action on the Higginbotham Flats Overlook Park Master Plan. And yeah, let's see who's going to start. Okay, come forward, please, ladies. If you'd introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Robin Bartling with Hort Copeland Mocht, a landscape architect that's helped on the master plan for this project.
And actually, we had a little difficulty hearing you. Generally, if your mouth's about 3 inches from the microphone, that's what we recommend. Can you try that again?
Yes. Is this better?
Yeah, maybe a little closer.
Okay, let's try this.
Okay, can you just say a few words and see if
Yes.
council can recognize?
Okay, hello, can everybody hear me?
Okay, council, is that better? Okay, I think we're good. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm Robin Bartling. I'm landscape architect with Hort Copeland Mocht that worked on the master plan for this project.
Hi, I'm Mia Reckesons. I am a landscape architect who also worked on the Higginbotham Flats Overlook Park.
Mia, I think it might be good if you could move the mic a little closer to your mouth too.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Council, is that okay? Can you all hear?
Testing, testing. Sorry, Mia Reckesons. Yes.
Okay, all right, ladies, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, council, for having us here tonight. We're excited to present this master plan for Overlook Park, Higginbotham Flats. And I'm going to speak a little bit to the presentation that you have before you. If we want to go ahead and advance the slide. So first up, just to share a little bit about this process. This process started a few years ago before we were involved when Parab and Save the Flats got together to talk about the land and potential uses or amenities that may go up here. And that happened back in 2020. And then August of 2023, the Parab group got together and talked about how they can, the project of actually developing a master plan for the site for the 2 parcels of land. And that was what this project entailed. And since then, we were hired in the end of the summer in August and started the project, kicked it off in August. Initially met with the Parab group and did a kickoff meeting, walked the site, got to know the area, the community. We met with the artist, Manuel Oplito, who also did art up there. And from there, we developed some initial concept plans and we took those to the community for some community engagement, both in person and online, and I'll cover that a little more in a minute. And then after that, we further refined the concepts into preferred master plan and ultimately into the final master plan that we're going to present to you tonight. Parab did approve that on December 2nd. And so the last thing you see on this schedule is this presentation to you tonight. So I just wanted to go over the project goals that were established at the beginning of this process. First is to honor the history, people, and land, provide amenities that activate the north side of the community, provide an inclusive and accessible park experience, maintain good relationships for the community, both native and non-native, incorporate educational opportunities, incorporate some sort of demonstration garden that reflects native and indigenous plantings, and then also incorporate art. Obviously, that's very important to this community as well. So those were kind of set the stage. And these really, I think, started pretty early on from when Parab put together the initial goals and the RFB for this project as well for the design team, and then got honed as we initially kicked off the meeting. And then we used these to really make sure that as we went through the process, we were meeting these goals. This slide is just existing conditions. Again, we walked up to the site, we walked around there a couple times, and it's a great site, great views, fairly flat in the developable area, and got an understanding of access, circulation, all that kind of stuff. We also met with the artist as well, that we'll talk a little bit more about, that also was incorporated into the master plan. So after that initial kickoff and existing conditions, we always do site analysis, gather a bunch of information. And so I just wanted to go through that fairly quickly just to understand overall context. And this obviously helps play into the design of the site as well. This first image is really overlaying your the area surrounding the park, as well as the park site, of what the different land uses are, and connectivity within their trails, roads, and so forth. Going to the next slide, it zooms in a little bit. Some of the things that we were looking at too is there's two parcels on this site that you'll see a little closer in a couple slides, but there's a right-of-way parcel for Topeka Avenue that actually divides the property and connects down into the neighborhood. And then we have commercial development there to the south, southeast. There's also city property, open space to the west, that also connects to another parcel that goes down to Serpentine Drive and Fountain Creek. And so we were looking at all these different opportunities and how to access the site for different multimodal opportunities. Zooming back out again was just understanding what community amenities there are and features, again, that might speak to the site, and just again, that connectivity. So that's what this image shows. And then the next one, again, zooms back into the site. And this, where we looked at, what is existing vegetation or what is not vegetated currently? How can we protect or utilize topography? Because it is pretty minimal. We know that sound is something that is important to consider, given that it's close to the highway. And where are the predominant views as well from the site, and how can we take advantage of that, as well as, again, connectivity, whether it's there or potential for the future, also were things that we were considering. So I wanted to talk then a little bit about how we went through the community engagement process. And this has a lot of bubbles on it, but I'll walk through it kind of simply. Basically, from left to right is how we went through the process. Initially kicking off the project, meeting with Parab, as I mentioned, we did develop 3 initial concept plans that we did take to the community. And we had a community workshop. We had it in this room. And then we followed that up with an online survey. And then from there, again, we met with Parab. You can see the dates on there several times to get us through the refining of the concept, whittled down to one preferred plan, and then ultimately the final master plan. I just wanted to share some of the tools that we used in the community engagement process. So this first one shows the dot voting exercise. This is really a bunch of imagery that you got 6 dots to vote on, your preferred amenities, the materials you liked, and what your preferences were. And so we used this in person, and everybody got to do that. And we put the same material online in a little, you didn't use dots, but you got check marks for those different amenities. And then another was other ideas. So is there something on the board that's not represented? Is there something that you want us to think about that we make sure we consider? Anything, make sure you share that with us. So this was the board that was from in person, but you also got the same opportunity online to provide that feedback. And then these were 3 concept options that we brought to the workshop. And we used them for a group activity where we had a group of people at each table, and we had a questionnaire to help facilitate the conversation or get the conversation going of what's your preferred concept or preferred concepts? What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you feel like is missing? And then at the end of the in-person workshop, we had everybody report out so we could understand that, because that really is important to hear what the conversation was. So, and this is the workshop process. So again, all the things that we used for the tools in that, and just the ground rules that we established for that. Online survey, as I mentioned, that went out. It was released the following day. It was open for 2 weeks for feedback to be provided again on those same activities, just in a digital format. And then moving on to the next one. After that, what we did is we combined all the results from that, what we heard in person and online, and what that helped us do was digest that information then, and then help us funnel down to what direction we should move for the preferred plan. This slide that you see here is there were a lot of amenities. So those dot voting boards that you saw earlier had a lot of images. This filtered down the images that you see on here were the top 14. We had a tie on quite a few of the last ones. So that's why 14 was the number versus, the top 8 or something like that. And so we really were going back to this through the process of, are we providing these top amenities that were desired by the community? And we reviewed all these results with the Parab group before we dove back in and looked at the refinement from the concepts down to one alternative, and had great dialogue of just other things to make sure we're considering maintenance and operations and accessibility and stuff like that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mia, and she's going to jump into the fun part, the meat of it, of the master plan, just starting off with the master plan core elements that feed into those goals that you saw earlier, but really she's going to be able to explain those in a little more depth, because these are really important elements that are in the master plan and carried through that process.
Thank you, Robin. So the master plan core elements were, like Robin mentioned, a conglomeration of what we heard from the community, what we heard from the Parab group, and these were the top 3 elements that drove the design as we moved into the final master plan. Element 1 was the ethnobotanical gardens. And so this was across the board, both online and in person, voted as one of the most highly desired amenities for the site. And what makes it unique is that it's basically a garden space that uses plants that embody connectivity of people and plants. And so sort of an ode to indigenous cultures, and using plants as a means of learning and educating people of how plants were used for medicinal purposes, for food, for ceremonies, just using it as an educational space and knowing that there's not a lot of water available up on this site, being sort of a flexible space that learns about native plants that were used in a significantly indigenous and culturally significant way. So that was our number one element for the master plan. Number two was community and connectivity. We heard over and over again how this space is sort of underutilized and it wants to be something more for the community. It's close to downtown, it's close to other parks, it's just wanting to be a gateway for people to come and use the space. And there's such amazing views from this area. There's already uses for indigenous cultures to come up here and have ceremonies, but it's not just for indigenous cultures, it's for the community as a whole. And it's meant to be a space for people to gather and use it in a variety of ways. And also to be inclusive and accessible across the board throughout the space. Number three was education and artistic expression. This was something that was desired both in an educational sense, both in plants, flora, fauna, being that it's a space that can see some culturally significant geological formations, Gog and Magog in the distance you can see from this space, learning about the indigenous cultures in the area, learning about what native species, both plants and animals, are in the area, just being a space where the community can learn and grow together, and having access for local artists to use the space as well. Okay, next slide. So Manuel Pulido, as Robin mentioned, he's been a core component in designing this beautiful cairn sculpture, as you can see in the photo, that has already been installed on the site. Each stone within the sculpture represents a different native tribe, with the intent of being this unifying piece that brings people together and appreciates who came before us and what this space really means. So he designed this amazing sculpture, and this has sort of been this driving force that drove the rest of the design as far as symbolism and community expression. And so through all of that process, we came to this master plan. I will go in detail for the different spaces, but this particular slide just encompasses a lot of the big main elements. And the next slide, I'll just jump right into the north side and we'll work our way south. So as a visitor to this space, you have a couple means of accessing it. The main access point would be along Higginbotham Road. And so as you're approaching the site, you enter a very minimal parking lot. We had comments from the community wanting this space to be fairly small, not too much parking, really a driving force of people accessing it by foot, by bicycle, but also a limited amount of parking. So as you're entering the site, there's a monument sign. There's a vehicular swing gate that would be manually locked by the Parks Department at night to limit people staying around too late past hours. But once you enter the site, it's meant to be this exploratory space where you can sort of meander and explore through natural materials. Crusher finds trails. The entry plaza itself welcomes you with educational signage. It has native planting. The ethnobotanical gardens are present right as you walk into the very first entry plaza. There's a composting toilet right at the entry as well. And so people can use the restroom before they explore the space. To the north side, there's an open, flexible, open space that is meant to be flexible for people to use for picnics and running around, but it's also meant to be a space for the fire department to use for emergency helicopter landings if needed. But the space itself has trails, it has picnic benches or picnic tables and benches. On the top north western corner, you can see there's a little plaza with picnic tables and a shade structure, as well as a connectivity to future trail systems, which haven't yet been designed, but there's open space in that direction where you could have a trail system connect in the future. And as we're working our way south, we have whenever you see a little yellow symbol, that's potential for art to be installed by local artists. And so as you're entering this space, there is an entry signage opportunity, some bicycle racks. And then if you go to the next slide, we can kind of jump right into the middle central space, which we have this meandering walkway that does a figure 8, and that is a very intentional design move to allow people to kind of loop back around and explore the space. And it's a healthy environment for people to explore the use of plants and vegetation, water, and educate themselves on some of the local flora and fauna. We have and some little features includes an open area for ceremonies. It has boulder seating that's sort of stacked up into the berm on the east side with a shade structure that can collect water. And so there's a rain barrel right there as well. But it's sort of a larger open crusher fine space for larger gatherings to happen. There's a sort of a bioswale that meanders through the site. So any water that's being collected throughout the site would sort of discharge into this space. And it's meant to be an educational opportunity in itself to learn about water collection and cleansing the water on the site as it moves to the south of the property. There's also geological formations that are protruding from the site to allow for plant growth, but also to mimic some of the geological formations in the area. And there's also new vegetation, deciduous shade trees, as well as small pedestrian bridges, crossings over where there's bioswales, so people can kind of enjoy the space, appreciate nature, and it's really meant to be this soft scape for people to enjoy. Next slide. So the most southern portion of the site has some amazing views in itself, and right in the center where you see that sort of large circle is where Manuel Pulido's sculpture is located. And so using that as this driving central piece, we've worked our way around it. We have this large shade structure down there as well to provide shade. There's another rain barrel at that shade structure to collect water to help water some of the plants on the site. There's swing benches under that shade structure, as well as a larger community table. There's a deck on the south side that is really meant for capturing those amazing views. There's educational signage down there to teach about the Gog and Magog formations, as well as a view scope for people to look through and see the amazing mountains in the distance. There's also a hawk nesting platform to encourage local birds, hawks, to come and nest in the area. I also failed to mention that there were very small bird houses on the north side of the site as well. So we're encouraging birds to come and appreciate this space as well. We also have some bike racks along that southern site as well as a potential for future trail connection to the south to allow people in different directions to come to the site. And as I mentioned, throughout the site, we have educational signage as well. And I believe that is most of it. Did I forget anything, Robin?
One thing I did want to mention is there, as I mentioned earlier on, there's the right of way, the Topeka Avenue that does bisect those two parcels. We had a great conversation during our community workshop of, what are the potential? Is that something that could be vacated? Could that land kind of partially go to the commercial property there and then the park site? That wasn't something we could resolve necessarily with this master plan, but I think something food for thought. I understand it also, we were told does serve for fire access or could serve for fire access. Part of it is developed as such in the lower area into the neighborhood. So I think something just to consider, but we are showing, as you probably saw, some improvements across that right of way in order to connect that site. We did keep any major kind of costly improvements out of that area, just in case that were to get developed. I did want to mention that. So we definitely did consider that, but just food for thought if there's a way to, give that land, a little more land to the park, if that's a use down the road. So with that, yeah, we're happy to take any questions, comments that you have.
Great, thank you. Council, I'll open it up to questions and comments. Nancy?
So tonight we're being asked to approve this concept, correct? And then what are the next steps?
So,
And the timing for the next steps?
so that would conclude the scope of this project is the completion of the master plan and approval of the master plan. I think maybe Danu might be able to speak to, or somebody from PARB, the next steps, but I think that's what the scope of this project is at this point.
I guess maybe Jillian's going to respond to that, give us a little idea of a timeline or direction.
Good evening, Council. Jillian Rossi, Parks and Recreation Director. This phase of the project would be complete upon Council's approval tonight, the master plan. PARB did put in for their 2025 budget the construction documents for this specific master plan if it were to be approved. So that would be the next step, would be compiling what the construction of this master plan would look like in 2025. And then, of course, raising funds eventually to start construction once we have accomplished some of our other projects that we're working on within parks, such as Soda Springs.
And Jillian, how much has been put aside for the construction documents?
That's
Or
a great
budgeted?
question. It's slipped my mind now. I know Danu presented that at the workshop back in October, and 75,000 was requested for the construction documents.
Thank you.
Other counselors? Julie?
Where's the locked gate? I missed that.
Sure. If you go back a couple slides to the north enlargement, right at the entry of the parking lot, there's a line that goes across, and that's meant to be, oop, there we go.
It's marked 19 on the slide.
There you go. Yep.
Oh, thank you. And my other question is, there's a really nice photo with flowering plants on the in the PowerPoint. And you said there's not a lot of water available on this site. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Sure.
Well, I guess what I want to know is, what does that mean? And how does that affect your plans to keep these plants alive?
So we did find out during this process, there has been a broken water system up there that I believe is going to be repaired if it's not already. So water will be available for the site. So we do anticipate that we would use water to establish the plants, but the goal is to obviously minimize water use as much as possible. So plant selection as such, and but we would be able to irrigate it.
And there are 13 parking spots. Is that plan? Do I get that right? 12 plus 1 ADA?
That's correct.
And you said something in the central enlargement page about opportunity education to learn about plants and water. Can you elaborate?
So the native plants on the site are a mixture of like the ethnobotanical garden concept. So some of the plants will be indigenous based, and some of them are just regular native plant selections from a palette of plants in the area. And so the educational portion would come into the differences between them, teaching about certain special species that are on the site that are unique in a way that have indigenous qualities or medicinal qualities or things like that. The water concept would be learning about how the water flows throughout the site and how it contributes to the native ecosystem.
How's that education going to be provided? Are you going to have a bunch of plaques, or are you going to hire somebody, or what's the plan? What's the idea?
That's still in the works a little bit. As of right now, it would be a mixture on the plans as plaques as well as identification signs for individual plants. But the intricacies of what that looks like would get figured out sort of later down the line. There's a lot of beautiful ways of having interactive signage as well as just plaques and text, things like that.
It's, Judith, you haven't spoken yet. Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. To what extent did you involve the indigenous community in the planning of this park?
So we did, the kickoff to the meeting we did learn a lot about we did learn a lot about the indigenous communities through our conversations with Manuel Polito, who had a lot to share about that. And then we did a little bit of research, which again would be more refined and, you know, kind of coordinated as the plans went into further development with those tribal communities, of how that would be kind of more dialed in and fully implemented there. But, you know, some of the things too, we're thinking about the importance of the, you know, the compass, or the north, south, east, and west, and what that represents for the different cultures and how that can be incorporated into the site. So we were thinking of that, and it probably shows a little bit of that on the plan of how to identify that. But it is different for each tribe and what that means. And so that's something that would be a little more, again, refined as the plans were further developed. And we did talk about getting more involvement and one-on-one with them as the plans would be refined.
I would like to recommend that in the educational piece that that we have some consultation with these tribes, and perhaps they can add some depth to the educational piece. I want to give you kudos. This is one of the best park plans I have seen, and I'm speaking from the climate change and environmental activism voice of the community, and there are many of us, but I love to see that you've used very minimal stamped concrete, pervious parking services. Hello, right? The composting toilet, the bird nests. I mean, I was so pleased to see that there was a clear connection between the community input and what you delivered. And I'm so pleased. I guess, you know, as a counselor, I do question, like, you know, how do we patrol this park, keep it safe? I mean, I know we have a gate there, but I guess that would be one of my just questions to ponder in the future. But I'm just really thrilled, and I love the ethno botanical garden. And as we know, in ethno botanical gardens, we look at the landscape and we look at the water and we plant native drought tolerant species, and I just love to see that incorporated in there. So I'm really thrilled, and I love the idea of perhaps future trail connectivity. So I'm pleased and impressed, and I want to encourage council to, you know, look at this and borrow some of these ideas for the future Dillon Mobility Hub. Although that's going to be mostly parking lot, I think that we can learn something here from you. So thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, and then Nancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to just speak on behalf as the liaison to Parab and just that their work as a team to kind of get us to this point and the numerous iterations and the ability to incorporate, again, a variety of opinions and ideas in this project. And so I've just been really impressed watching them work. And then additionally, their understanding of the timing, right? That we are going to be finishing Soda Springs Park and that there's a process that we're going to be following as we move forward. And just the entire process, I've just been, again, I've been really, I'm excited and looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely design. But I do have a lot of concerns. And so I have no problem with closing out the contract with you guys for this portion of it. But I'm very concerned about it going forward any further in the near future. And I guess this is more directed to Jillian. It may be years, and I don't know what the rough order of magnitude is to construct this, but I expect it to be quite large in the $1 million+ range to accomplish this if we were to go forward to it. So I think that with all the projects that we currently have ongoing, it's unrealistic to expect this to happen anytime soon. That being said, before we approve it, hence I would rather the funds be used, the $75K to do the construction drawings, that be used to fund Soda Springs Park Phase 2 and potentially Phase 3, which we've taken, what, I believe $900,000 out of the general fund to support Phase 2. And at this point, I think council is concerned about our budget, and I think that would be a more appropriate use of the funds at this point in time. I'm also concerned that, as I brought up before, that I wonder where the tipping point is as we continue to build assets within the city assets. Where's the tipping point where we can maintain these things? And whereas this appears to be not that much maintenance, it will still require a lot. Initially, even if you plant all these trees and flowers and so on, initially it will require a lot of water to get them started. So I think that, as I've raised before, I think that talking with both OSAC staff and Parab as to what we can truly accommodate in terms of maintenance in the future, I would rather that happen and that we get some sort of a recommendation back on that before we move forward with any other large project in this regard. I'm also concerned because conditions change. And again, I don't think that this is going to happen anytime soon because I don't think we're going to have $1 million plus to get it constructed in the near term. And conditions usually change in the interim, and then we just keep having to redo. So that's a big concern of mine. I don't think we should move forward with it until we have a safe way for residents to access this park. Currently, really the only way to access it is by car. And I was at the meeting, the community engagement meeting that night, and there was a lot of concern that I heard from people in the neighborhood, in the Agate Hill in particular, who did not want people accessing it through their neighborhood. So that's a concern. And I know you're looking at something from down to Serpentine. But until that's worked out, I think that is a problem. Let's see. There was also at the community engagement evening a very persuasive argument or discussion, I suppose, regarding who would use this park. Would it be residents or whom? And the assumption by some of us was that it would be primarily used for people going down 24 as opposed to actually residents using it. So that's a concern of mine. I also think it's time for us to revisit the document governing the ownership of the property. It concerns me that the city would invest so much money into a property that the city does not own outright. And I was also wondering if you'd found out if we can even get grants if the city doesn't own the property. I think that would be very useful to know. I know grants that I've done in the past, the city has to own the property free and clear. in the meantime, I have no problem fixing it up a bit. I think, there's some benches up there. I was quite surprised that Manny's sculpture was up there already. I mean, it's lovely but I was just surprised because I didn't think that that's what we had all agreed to. But my memory could be incorrect on that. So I would have no problem with doing a bit, mowing it, cleaning it up a bit. The benches are lovely, maybe, local people building a platform or a fence, with some things along those lines, perhaps a few trees and whatever, to do something of a proof of concept for this, for the future. Because I do want to have it nice up there, but I just think that it's too much in the near term. And by near term, I mean the next few years. So I see I do see a reason to approve this just to close out the contract. But in terms of moving forward, I can't say that I'm an advocate until we've answered a number of questions that I think are very pertinent to the moving forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shada?
Well, I guess I really like this plan. One of the things, and I'd like us to approve this concept, there's the only concern that I have is I really think that one of the goals of Save the Flats, and I live in that neighborhood, okay, is a vision that we would own all that property up there. Okay. And it's difficult. And I would actually kind of hope that if we had the opportunity to grab those 2 parcels that are over there between our property and I'm looking at Danu here, she's shaking her head, and the storage units, that we would show a priority, okay, that we would, if we had to make a choice, that we would actually purchase those parcels and delay actually consummating this great master plan, okay? I don't see that the active area of those additional parcels would have to have this type of design. Okay, in other words, I don't know, is that we would need a lot more pathways or plantings or whatever. I guess one thing I would like to ask is in the drawings where the breeze and not the parking area, but the area around the helipad and the area around the paths, what is the treatment of those soils? Are those to be left native, or is that a lot of where the plantings would go? Help me with that, especially like that helipad area.
That's what I was gonna
Can
ask. So
you
the
go over what the design would envision for that?
Yeah, I mean, there are some of that's not been detailed at this point since it is master plan, but the thought is, one of the big things was it is a helipad. We do know that that's a need from the fire department. And so that use does stay. It does minimize what you can do in that space, but we did want to, through the conversations of, how do we activate that space because it's not used for, fire purposes.
I guess what I was interested in, what your advice would be in terms of, I mean, would hate us to see that the helipad would be I'm sensitive like Judith in terms of the treatment of the land and whatnot, that we're not blacktopping everything.
Mhm.
So that's why I was asking. I have a clear idea about these breeze paths. I have pretty clear ideas about plantings. I mean, I'm a gardener myself and whatnot. So I know that, we wouldn't put asphalt down and just, put a plant on top of that or something like that. But there's a lot of that area up there. What were you thinking about? Just
Sure, there would be a
sky with me or whatever.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
The treatment, especially that helipad.
Yeah, there would be a combination of things, but we haven't. We're
Could it be
anticipating
like
this.
native grass?
Yeah, we're anticipating the soil depth is probably minimal in
Yeah.
much of that area. So we think there would be some soil that would need to be brought in to establish native
Well-
grasses
well,
and
the-
plants.
The vast majority of that helipad has been used as a construction staging area. Okay, so it has been really beat down. The crap has been just beat down after it. Okay. And so that's why I was kind of asking, because it can get kind of a little bit windy up there. I guess I'm completely opposite of Nancy on this. I'm not concerned about this. Okay, in terms of our ability to take care of this. Okay. I'm of the philosophy that I don't think we've anywhere come close in our community to the threshold of having too much parks, too much open space, and too much of this stuff. Okay. And I have no problem going back to the voters if we need to have sort of a dedicated amount like we do that helps, partially fund what we're doing down in Fields Park and testing that with the voters. I applaud, like Judith does, about the process. Okay. I think it's a really nice design. I think it's very inspiring. And I guess as somebody who does live in that neighborhood, I have not heard that hikers and walkers who have been availing themselves of all of the public, okay, these are all public right-of-ways that currently get you from downtown up into Higginbotham Flats, okay? I have never heard from any of my neighbors, I know every one of them, that anybody is not welcome on those public pathways. They are public right-of-ways, okay? People are absolutely welcome to walk on them, okay? There is some gating that's been going on because I don't think anybody has wanted a whole bunch of traffic that would kind of come down from Higginbotham Flats because some of these right-of-ways are very much unimproved, okay, and rugged. And if you would take a conventional car, you're probably going to get it high centered and have some issues with it. So I guess I do want to speak out on that because I've not heard that people are not welcome to go up there. I am up there almost on a daily basis. Okay. Okay. I've never heard that that's an unwelcome thing. Okay. So I don't know where that concern's coming from. I'm not trying to say it isn't somebody's concern. It's just that something I just wanted to speak to that I don't think that's, I'm unaware of that is some kind of a concern. And I don't think that if this was developed, okay, that there would be any more traffic up and down there. Okay. I really like how you've minimized the parking. Okay. My only suggestion would be is that gate. I know it's a concept idea in terms of where you put it there. I guess I would just suggest that it's a little bit closer to the road so there isn't a place to pull over there at night and whatnot. That is a very difficult area in which I think for our police department to be on top of at night. And so I think we definitely do not want anybody parking up there, okay, at night, because it's just such an easy get off the highway, get on, and that type of stuff. I'm constantly going up there, okay, and using my car to haul off trash and things like that. And that has been minimized since our Public Works Department and whatnot has gone up and provided a lot of that barrier. That has stopped a lot of that kind of, behavior where people could kind of pull off the highway and think that, oh, isn't this a great place where I could kind of dump my trash? And I don't know where they were headed in Colorado Springs with it. I can't believe that you're headed. I don't know why in my head, it just doesn't seem like you're headed westbound with your trash. I don't know. I think it's exciting. I think it's a great challenge. Okay. For us to raise the money to do it. I guess I do concur a little bit with Nancy about whether next year, this current year is the right year to do those construction drawings. Okay. Because I do want to get some projects completed, but I do want to say I am really tickled, with this design and this project. And even if it takes us 8 years to do it, 10 years or something like that, I think it would be a great community investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie was first.
Julie?
I agree with Nancy in that I don't want to go ahead and purchase the construction drawings at this time. I want to finish Soda Springs in its entirety, the park. And I want to finish the other projects, even though it's coming out from different sources of money. I want the staff to be able to really get it together and finish up the projects that are ongoing with Soda Springs and the Dillon and the Hiawatha plan and all of that. And I just think about how we spend money in the past getting, like traffic recommendations and mobility studies, and then we have to pay for it all over again 5 years later because now it's out of date and whatever. Since we are not going to work on this project immediately, or at least I wouldn't think so, I'd rather have the construction drawings be purchased and paid for closer in time to when we're ready to start rocking and rolling with getting the money together for this plan. I'm also happy that the parking area is less than I had originally heard it would be, because I don't want a lot of parking up there. I love the idea of purchasing the adjacent lots and using PARB money or open space money or both to purchase those lots. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd rather go forward with that at this time than to go forward with the actual construction drawings. But I support the idea, the concept, and I do have concerns that it's going to be a really convenient drug dealing location. You stop, you use the bathroom, you pull over. There could be it could be a convenient place for bad things to happen. And so we may need to end up looking at more police patrol up there and lighting or what have you. But I do think that locking off the parking area is probably a step in the right direction to try and prevent some of that. And I'm not clear on what, Nancy, you were talking about the city not owning certain property. Is this proposal suggesting that we're going to be developing property that we don't own? Because if so, I kind of missed that. I need help with that.
We don't own this property free and clear. It's
What makes you think that?
okay, then I misspoke. However, I would ask Jeff to weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at that in a while. I know I did a whole analysis of who owns what portions, so I'd have to go back and look at my notes on that, but assume maybe staff's worked based on that direction. I just don't recall.
I thought it was jointly owned by the 501c3 Flats Group, Save the Flats, I think it's called, and the city jointly, free and clear. Is that not your understanding, Nancy, or what were you thinking?
I have not read the agreement in a while, but my understanding is that I had been under the impression that Save the Flats and the city jointly owned it, but I could be wrong in that assessment. But there is some sort of an agreement between the two organizations, which is less than ideal.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm not too concerned about the agreement between the two entities because I haven't heard anything suggesting there could be a problem with it. I mean, I have no problem intellectually reading about it or whatever, but in terms of our ownership, just so we're clear, then all of this land we own. So we're not going to be paying these expensive consultants to tell us how we should develop somebody else's property.
Yeah, it was
I
my
just wanted
memory.
to clarify that.
I'm sorry. It was my understanding that the city did not own it free and clear, but if I'm wrong on that, I apologize.
Yeah, I think we
for
do
saying
own
that.
it. I mean, if it's not free and clear, what that means is that we have a mortgage or we have some kind of a lien or a judgment filed as a lien. Free and clear means it's not co-owned with the bank. And there's no bank involved that I'm aware of. So I think we own it free and clear jointly with this 501c3 entity.
Yeah, I just pulled up the memo and the conclusion in the memo is it's the city and Save the Flats Inc. own it as tenants in common. And there's, I think, 3 separate parcels that they all own together. So that's what the memo says. I don't recall an agreement, but I could look at that too, see how. I think it's more like how they were gonna work together to operate it. Yeah, I think there was, but I have to look for that too. So.
Thank you. Daniel, do you have a comment?
Danu Fat, I'm with Save the Flats tonight,
And your address, please, Danu, your address.
1201 Manitou Avenue. So, back when the Save the Flats purchased this land with OSAC, Open Space, we did not have a working agreement with the city. But according to the tenants in common, each of us have to agree on what the usage is going to be on a 50-50 basis, if I'm not mistaken. No, because the city of Manitou cannot enter into ownership as tenants, joint tenancy. It's got to be tenants in common.
Right, we're an entity, so, right.
And so the land is free and clear. It's purchased with city money and with the money that Save the Flats raised to go toward that land.
Okay.
And then if I could just continue really quickly, why we want to move forward with construction documents next year is because the way our RFP was set up was to have a designer build bid on the job so that they would create the design, but also they would be the ones to do the construction documents based on their design that they created. So that's one of the reasons why we'd like to just move forward while we still have Hort Copeland and Mock here, as they were the ones who did the design, and the RFP was set up as design build by whoever was going to get the contract.
Thank you. Councilor Chandler?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question and then a follow-up comment. With regards to construction drawings, it's always been my understanding, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, that when you are going out for funding, that it is a lot easier to obtain funding. And I'm thinking this is ripe for a GOCO grant, among other things, very ripe for a GOCO grant, that potential grantors want to see those construction drawings. Is that correct or not necessarily? Is my question. And then I have a comment.
I can speak to that a little bit. It does depend on the grant, but typically, especially a GOCO grant, the master plan should be sufficient for that.
Thank you. So I may be an N of one here, but it's a position I've become really comfortable in. Council directed you, staff and Parab, to bring us a master plan, and you have delivered. I do have concerns about safety. I think that is an issue that always has been a problem with this piece of land, whether we have a park on it or don't. And I am very interested in the city acquiring those other pieces of property. However, in your design, you have taken into consideration, especially that piece that's Topeka Road, and not doing a whole lot there. There's some crusher fine pathways. And so, I really appreciate your attention to those parcels that may be developed in the future. So recently, Council was tasked with deciding upon several options for Hiawatha Gardens. And we spent months getting sufficient information, in my personal opinion, to make the right decision earlier on. But we did decide on an option, and Mayor Pro Tem, when you were really advocating for an over $10 million project, which would have taken out a minimum of 34 trees and decimated for all time Memorial Park, I will quote you as saying, if we want something bad enough, we will, quote, find the money for it. And that's a $10+ million project. So I look at this project as something that I look at and this ties into economic development. I think of, who do we want to be as a town, and what kind of tourist visitor do we want to attract? And my goal of my life is to hopefully have this to be a true micromobility hub from gateway to gateway. And I see this as a key piece to that in conjunction with our trails, our creek walk. And I think that this is a reason I would come here, is to enjoy this trail connectivity and this outdoor experience. So given that, I would like to see us move forward with construction drawings and also take a look at the possibility of acquiring those pieces of property. I'll close with this. I do serve as the liaison to the match board, and I actually was the one that recommended to the match board that they hold off on Manny Peluto's statue until we had until this was further on. So I also was surprised that the statue is in place. But now that it is, what's done is done. I think we need to do a little bit of a postmortem on that process. But I really support moving forward with construction drawings on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, and then I've got some comments.
Thank you. I need help, and I'm not sure if it would be the consultants or Danu or who would be the one to answer this, but I would like to know, because Danu, you addressed this a little bit, the pros and cons of going forward now versus waiting 12 months on the construction drawings. Because what I understood you to say, Danu, is you wanted to go forward with the construction drawings right away because the RFP provides that these same consultants will do the construction drawings. But assuming they're not going to go out of business or go bankrupt in the next 12 months, is there a problem with pushing this forward 12 months so we can focus on other things? Or if that's a problem, I want to know about it so I can make a decision based on the knowledge. I really don't know the pros and the cons of waiting.
Danu, can you respond to that?
Well, Nick, we're right in the middle of just starting Soda Springs Park with the phase 2, and that's probably going to take us up to the probably springtime. Yeah. And then what we could do to continue with Soda Springs Park, and I know that we don't want to do construction during the summertime. So probably we would take a break after we get the phase 2 done in Soda Springs Park. And then the next thing that I would like us to do in Soda Springs Park would be to put in the turf, the sod, so that the whole area in front of the pavilion is done. And that in itself is going to require another, amount of monies to get done, because hasn't been really, some of it has been budgeted. I'm not sure how much, but meanwhile, PARAB could be working on the construction documents, so we could keep moving forward with what the momentum that we have, and still, be doing Soda Springs Park or,
So if we have construction drawings, are they going to be completely useful and valid 24, 36 months later after they're given to us? Or is that going to be a problem? Because I'm trying to think about what happens after we get the drawings. I just don't want to be wasting money having to redo stuff. Is there any problem with the construction drawings sitting in a drawer for a few years? Or
I don't think so. Because if anything, it'll give us a better idea of what kind of money we have to raise to get the park built. And that's the piece where it's going to kind of languish. But while we have court plan production documents and then get a price of what we're looking for to raise.
what kind of time frame are we talking about when we talk about preparation of these construction documents? Is that a 3-month thing? Is that a 9-month thing? What are we looking at?
I can speak to that. I would say probably about 6 months.
6?
Yeah. I mean, other things that you could consider as well as taking it through design development or schematic design, and then design development would be the next phase, of which wouldn't take you fully through construction documents, but would help you kind of hone the design as well as put a better put a cost on the improvements. So just as an option. And then when monies become available, if you could, take that, if it's a phase or the whole thing through construction drawings at that time.
And then is it possible that we could postpone construction documents and just get started doing some basic minimal stuff like putting in the bathrooms or something? Is it something that can be phased in before, or you need the construction documents first before you start yeah, or you need the first, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to make a few comments. And like Councilman Shada, I live pretty close below don't live too far from Higginbotham Flats, the size. So I'm somewhat more familiar with it, I think, than others. Historically, I mean, some of the use of that property is it is a high flat area. I don't have to tell anybody that. That is one of the few areas in Manitou Springs, particularly at the west end of town, that is relatively defensible against fires and against floods. In my mind, the highest and best use of that piece of property is an emergency staging area. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be a park or anything, but whatever it is, when an emergency happens, it's got to be able to surface. So I'm glad to see things like the helipad. I have questions about, there are times when we had the Waldo Canyon fire and the Hayman fire that there was not just a helicopter in there. They had, like a little portable, actually pretty good size, like a above ground swimming pool they were using to replenish to feed the buckets on the helicopters. And there were fire trucks up there. It took up a lot of real estate, and it was like that for 2 weeks at least. About that, whatever it took to fight the fire, and then a little more. That was important. Following the floods, it was a construction area. It was a marshal area for construction. That was both when the work was being done in Williams Canyon with the floodway there, and then more recently when we were doing the project that wouldn't seem to end, the MAPS project from Tubby's Turnaround west, rebuilding Manitou Avenue. That was a staging area for materials. We anticipate that in the coming years, and I won't be here, I hope I'm still alive, but I may not be, when we get the Ruxton corridor work getting done. I think the anticipated schedule now is 3 years. We will need a place to stage materials. That to me, it comes to mind that is a likely possibility that we're going to need that. So it seems to me the timing would be to wait off till we get some of these construction projects done and then develop the park. Some of it can be developed now. I think where we've got, there's the benches there. Manny's got his cairn, and some of that could be developed without compromising our ability to use that for a staging area. And I think we're going to have to rebuild the Serpentine Bridge at some point here. So that's, we can paint, in essence, is kind of analogous to painting ourselves into a corner if we're not careful. So my inclination, one thing is to defer doing any substantial work up there. It is a design. I know people have worked hard on it. It does look quite beautiful. But again, I have reservations for the immediate need for construction and the ever-present need for an emergency staging area. And I know you've got some of that built into it, but still.
Mayor?
You're done. Let me finish, Tanu, okay?
Okay.
Okay, because I'm sorry, I've got more than I usually have, but.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Those two benches that are up there, that was the Scout project back in 2003, and I remember being part of that. Shortly after that, I think Save the Flats asked the city about putting a couple picnic tables in a garbage can. In Park and Recs, the staff answer was that they didn't have the resources to take care of what they had now, and they didn't want to create an attractive area, a place where people come in, picnic, and leave their trash. So the ongoing maintenance, I realize this is 21 years later, but if we do this, we're increasing our commitment to provide maintenance, and I have reservations about what we've been able to maintain up to this point. We've got examples of a lot of deferred maintenance, and I think we should tackle the projects we've undertaken, the swimming pool, for instance, in Soda Springs Park. And as a matter of fact, Soda Springs Park, if you go down and take a look at the rock wall up at the west end of the park, by the creek, stand on the opposite side of the park there along Manitou Avenue, and look at the creek, you'll see that rock wall, which it's a beautiful greenstone wall, it's undermined. It's in danger of collapse, I think, and we should address some of those things. For all the study and work that's gone into Soda Springs Park, I don't know that anybody's really looked at the wall, and it seems sort of like a tragic oversight. I think we've got some other things we need to catch up on. At one time, there was a community garden. It's about where the helipad is now, I think, and the soil up there it's not soil, it's gravel, it's rock. Okay, I remember people bringing in, I was one of them, we brought in a lot of topsoil and cow manure to make that a garden. And then one of the problems we had was the lack of water. And the water tank that was put up there was about 2 feet of head so that the water just trickled. It took people forever to water their plots, and it basically failed. There's a lot of sun and a lot of wind, and that seemed to be a little more than quite a bit more than what those gardens would take. So I have concerns. You've talked about having a broken pipe and fixing the pipe up there. That's a high spot. If we fix the pipe, are we going to have adequate water pressure? We have households in Manitou at the higher elevations that they complain about water pressure in the summer when we have a lot of tourists in town. They sometimes have I remember talking to people who had no water pressure on the 4th of July. That's how they celebrate the 4th of July, no water pressure. Too many people in town. So I have some concerns there. Vandalism, that's been mentioned. I think that is a relevant concern. And who's going to use it? Will Manitou residents use it? Will tourists? I mean, are we just creating an attractive spot for people? I mean, with an RV, you could pull over and want to stay there all night. And I don't think that's one of the attractive nuisances we want to create. Water is scarce, a lot of wind and water, so whatever vegetation up there has to be hardened. Vandalism is concerned. I think that Topeka Avenue needs to be addressed. That's an escape route for the neighborhood below, and be also an access for emergency vehicles. I think part of the deadline, this being in the last meeting of the year, we were trying to get this done in part so that Manny could get some direction if he was going to get his grant from Match. But my understanding was him being able to get that was contingent upon us approving this. And like some of the other council members, I'm surprised that he went ahead and did the work. And I guess I'd like to hear an explanation of why that's the case. It's beautiful. I like it. And certainly the area has resonated with a lot of the Native Americans. You can see that they went in and voluntarily built their own medicine circle up there right after Indigenous Peoples Day. So those are some of my thoughts. I am inclined to not support this at the time. I do want to recognize the work that people have done. There's some neat ideas here. I don't think this is the time. I think we need to address some other things and get those done. As I think Councilor Wolf said, if we go ahead with construction drawings now, are we going to have to change them in a couple of years? It's just kind of maybe money down the drain. Thank you. Anyone else? Michelle, did you have any thoughts? John, did you have comments?
Daniel, I guess I want to ask a question, and because I guess Julie kind of probed around it, but I guess I want to get some more closure on this. I just want to ask a question. If the construction drawings, okay, it sounds like to me the consultants are saying that we can do some initial grant stuff off of this master plan. Is that correct? Okay. So I want to ask from you guys' standpoint, if we decided to focus at $75,000 on finishing, as an example, Soda Springs Park, okay, or there was something that we just really needed to use that $75,000 for this year, and it wasn't until next year, okay, that we did the construction drawings. Can you help me? Just tell me what that looks like if we didn't do the construction drawings until, let's say, 2026. Can you help me with that?
Well, Para has allotted $50,000 from our from our GOCO money that we receive yearly. We generally get about $52,000 per year. So that would be if we spent our 50,000 on Soda Springs Park, then we would have to wait until the following year to get our other $50,000 for the following year.
Well, I guess just help me with if we didn't do the construction drawings until 2026, okay?
Mhm.
What does that mean in terms of timing, grants, this design to build concept and the whole 9 yards? It seems like to me all that does is just kind of delay that by 1 year. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so, but I don't know where Mia and Robin are going to be, and I really want them to do the construction documents. So for me, it's more being able to utilize their services while they're here. Because one of their team members that we worked with on Soda Springs Park has already left and taken another job with another firm. And so since Robin and Mia have made the design, then they would best know the construction that would go into building the park.
Okay.
And then Mayor, what I was going to say to you is what we are asking for is you just to approve the design. That's all for tonight. And then the rest of the pieces are going to have to happen down the road. And whether we do the construction, well, the construction is going to really happen down the road, but at least if we have the construction documents, that piece of the next phase is done. And it won't change because it's based on the design, and it'll give us a better idea of how much money we're looking at to build it. But I'm more prepared to put that on the road down the way.
Denise?
Yeah, just a couple of numbers from the budget that you have approved at this point. In 2025, under the Parks and Recreation projects, you've approved 100,000 to do Soda Springs Park Phase 3 for the construction drawings, because you haven't approved a final design for that. So we need to get through that. And then you have in the budget right now preliminary 935,000 in 2026 for Soda Springs Phase 3. That's a guesstimate. And I have in the SIP that we have 80,000 in your area to do the Higginbotham Flats for the construction drawings. So that's what you've just approved. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, we've got a lot of hands up. Okay, so Natalie, and then we'll just come along here. Go ahead, Natalie.
Okay, I just wanted to, so I just appreciate that Janu reminded us that we're just approving the plans today and not approving the construction drawing request, but that's a different conversation because I am looking at recommended action. So I just wanted to reiterate that because I thought that was an important change in where we're headed.
Okay, thank you. Nancy and then Judith.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, or as I said, I am willing to approve the concept plan tonight. I am not willing to approve construction documents for this year. And so even though we're only asked to approve or not the concept plan, I don't know if it makes sense to delay a decision on the construction drawings so that if we decide not to do them this year, that staff doesn't have to put the effort into doing, I don't know if the contract's already written or not. So just in terms of efficiency, we might want to make that decision if we want to go forward with the construction documents tonight or not.
Thank you. And Judith is next.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a PARAB 101 question. I only served on PARAB long enough to get through one budget retreat. It's my understanding that GOCO releases the 50,000 or 52,000 at a certain point each year. When do you receive those funds from GOCO? Because I'm wondering if this actually wouldn't delay the project actually by 2 years, because it's my understanding that it doesn't come in January, if my memory serves me.
Rebecca Davis, Finance Director. So when we're referring to GOCO, it's actually the Colorado Conservation Trust Fund. And that's lottery money that the city receives. And it's distributed quarterly. So we'll get 4 payments, and it is roughly around 52,000 aggregated.
Thank you. That helps.
Thank you. John?
So Denise, did you not say that we have it in the budget right now for the construction drawings?
Yes, you've approved it at this point. Yes.
Okay, so those have been done. And so if somebody doesn't want those in the budget, then I would suggest we ask the mayor to bring an amended, ordinance to amend it, because otherwise right now it's currently law. Okay, we've already passed the budget. We've already, we're submitting the budget to the state and the whole 9 yards. So if we want to undo that, okay, that's not properly before us tonight. It's the master plan right now that's before us tonight. And if we want to amend that, it seems like to me, we could give guidance to hold it off for a quarter until we look at the amended budget in a quarter or something like that, if that seems to be the sense of council. But it appears like to me from what you're saying is it's already approved in the budget.
Yes, it's
Thank you.
approved.
Julie?
Denise, what did you say? We've got 100,000 already approved for Soda Springs for the phase 3, which is the one that's about to start. No.
Phase 2 is about to start. That's the one that will be completed, and that is in the budget and it's under contract. So that one is starting. You have in the budget for 2025, 100,000 to get the master plan and hopefully construction drawings done for phase 3 of Soda Springs, which is scheduled to be done in 2025. And then you have 935,000 preliminarily approved the SIP shows 935 in 2026
And then
to
you had
complete the Soda Springs.
and you had a third number that you threw out.
I have
80 something?
80,000 that's in the budget right now that was approved for under let me grab it real quick. So I make sure I do the right thing.
And that's for the construction.
And it's under Danu's and Parap's budget of 80,000 is what's in there. It's under the Conservation Trust Fund, and it shows 80,000 in 2025 for Higginbotham Flats, and that's for the construction drawings. And then in 2026, you have 30,000 for park improvement projects right now.
And the 2025, the 80,000 that you're talking about, is that 30,000 of city tax money and
No, that's
50,000 of what Danu said she already has?
nope. That's 100. That's 100%. 80,000 is coming from the Conservation Trust Fund per the SIP. The news
So
thought it
this-
was
is Danu gonna have
75,000.
50,000
It's-
left
it's-
over
no.
once we do, okay,
No.
so that's part of her money.
Yeah.
I mean.
That
the GoCo money.
80,000 is the Conservation Trust Fund, not GoCo. It's the lottery program. So we don't want to get that confused because the GoCo is a grant that you have to request and get those funds. So 80,000 right now is in the SIP approved from the Conservation Trust Fund for the Higginbotham Flats Park.
Okay, thanks.
So my question, Denise, could that money be used for other things in the parks?
It would have to go through Parap and they have to approve it and then bring it to you for final approval, but it would have to go through Parap for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Can I
Oh,
just
so
say
we
that
could
Para
use-
recommends, they don't approve.
Thank you. Good point. They recommend, they make a recommendation.
So we could use that money for Soda Springs if we wanted.
Yes.
You would have to do a budget amendment, but you could give direction tonight. I think tonight what you can do is one, approve the master plan. I think that's probably the first step. And then if you want to discuss the budget more, is say to Danu and the team, don't move forward until we have time to look at this. If it's April, and we will then give you approval. And it sounds like that might be the timing that they were looking at anyway, or she may want to move right away. But that is, tonight it's just approve the master plan. And then you can give direction of hold off on moving forward with the construction or go ahead and proceed.
And it's, I think, pretty clear that at some point, maybe the February, March timeframe, council will be looking at the budget again. When we have a better sense of what the impact of marijuana sales in Colorado Springs are. So, is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. So, but this is not, remember, I just want remember that what's in for Higginbotham is not under the general fund. So that is not under the general fund.
Other comments?
I have
Did
another
you-
question.
Okay.
Is
Jeff,
it
did you-
use it or lose it with the lottery money, or we can save it?
No,
Okay.
we bank it. Is that, we
All right.
bank it. Anything else, council? I guess we're at motion time. Julie?
I move approval of the master plan, the Higginbotham Flats master plan.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Motion carries with the 6-1 vote with Mayor Graham as the dissenting vote.
Thank you. Okay.
Mayor,
Direction.
may I just ask clarification? Because I don't want this team to go and say, let's write a RFP and let's get these construction drawings done. And then they come back and plan to bring that contract to you and you say, wait a second. So do you want them to go ahead and proceed, just give a general direction of that? Or do you want them to wait for a moment? So give a general direction so they don't go do what you may not want them to do.
Okay. Look, council member would like to make a motion?
I would,
What is-
I would like to make a motion that we delay until April until we look and see what the 420 thing is. So if you guys would, it's sort of kind of, I know it's not on the agenda, but it seems like to me, if you would just roll with us until we figure out for the first 4 months where we are with the budget. And then when we evaluate that in April, we can kind of give a nod or not, because possibly by April, we may be amending the budget. So I guess I would move that we would direct you guys and staff to kind of delay this for 4 months, 3 months, something like that, until we evaluate where we are with this 420 money.
Thank you. I think it's okay to do that as a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, second by Julie. Any further discussion? Okay, Judith, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So we have approved the master plan. So even though we are, it looks like it's council is moving in a direction to address this issue again after the first quarter of 2025. Now that you have the master plan, can you still move forward with looking at grants? Because you mentioned that, is that something you can be doing in the interim between now and April?
We don't know how much money we're looking at.
I see. So you would have to wait until spring to even go out and could you articulate that to me? Thank you.
You would typically, you would need and there's other grants out there, but I'm speaking to GoCo because I'm fairly familiar with that, but you would need some level of cost estimate that would be associated with that. And then there's typically a match anytime you're going after a grant, which I think could be sorted out when you go after those grants, but.
I guess, and maker of the motion, it seems like to me, 3 months, we could at least identify these grant sources, right? Okay, who they might be, given the way this project is kind of configured. It's 3 major concepts. It seems like to me, those might help in terms of channeling what those grant sources might be. So it seems like to me, we can do some preparation in terms of in these 3 months while we get our act together from the standpoint of the budget. Is that not correct?
I'm thinking that the grant portion would have to come from Parab and Save the Flats to do that kind of research with the help of staff, not Port Copeland and
Well,
Mark.
I understand. I'm not
Right.
saying who's doing it. I'm just saying in that 3 months,
Mhm.
it seems like to me, we can move forward with essentially doing some research. I'm not suggesting who is doing the research. It just seems like to me that 3 months isn't gonna just materially just throw this all out of whack while we just, get our bearings with this. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay,
reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Judith, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. You've been very generous. I am in favor of moving forward with construction drawings. And my rationale for that is, A, it's in the budget. And we may be down the road, really having some significant budget constraints. We don't know. There's big question marks. But if we have the money and you need the construction drawings to move ahead with looking at grants, match grants, whatever you're looking at. I don't want to delay this. I mean, $80,000, I'm sorry, we've already spent $680,000 on phase 2 of Soda Springs Park. And it looks like we've got another 935,000 for 2026 and 100,000 for 2025. So, you know, as much as I think 80,000 would certainly cover sod and some other things, when we're talking about those kind of numbers, I just don't think 80,000 is going to make is going to be the tipping point of getting Soda Springs Park finished. So that's my rationale. Thank you.
Other comments? I guess $80,000 here, $20,000 there. I mean, we bought a car wash that was assessed for $310,000 with a good assessment. We paid $650,000. I think we need to look at how we spend money here. Any further comments? John, you want to restate the motion?
My motion is that we just give staff and para direction that we just would delay this for 4 months until we get our budget kind of, you know, rejiggered for the first quarter.
Okay. Let's vote.
Motion carries 6-1 with Counselor Chandler as the dissenting vote.
Okay. All right, thank you. That concludes that business. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate the efforts you've made. Okay, I suggest we take a break. Let's go till about 10 of 8. Okay, let's take a break.
I was looking up Higginbotham Flats ownership. I actually been doing work for